To consider the role of the Responsible Finance Forum and its vision for the future, I'm delighted to introduce two leaders in the field. Mayada El-Zogby, who many of you know as the Managing Director here at the Center for Financial Inclusion at Acción. She is a former CGAP colleague of mine, where she so ably led for the 5-year strategic review and was head of the Research and Development Unit. So welcome to Mayada. And also to Sharmila Hardy. She is Global Head of Banking at the International Finance Corporation. The IFC led RFF for over a decade. And Sharmila comes with deep experience in finance and investing, and she is passionate about applying a global lens, agenda lens to financial inclusion. So welcome, and over to you, Sharmila.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you very much. And welcome everyone to this gathering of the Responsible Finance Forum. We are really excited to have you with us today as we discover and discuss an exciting new chapter for the Responsible Finance Forum and for the entire field of inclusive finance. I'm so glad to see many of the co-founding partners here today. The Responsible Finance Forum started in 2009 when a coalition of stakeholders recognized that tackling critical challenges required collaborative approaches. Your presence and participation reflects not only your long-standing commitment, but also the importance of working together to ensure responsible finance continues to be at the core of our collective work in inclusive finance. From my perspective, I cannot see a world in which inclusive finance can exist without responsible finance. I'd like to take a moment to appreciate some of the organizations that have played such an important role in the Responsible Finance Forum over these years: CGAP and our colleagues at the World Bank, GIZ and BMZ, the government of the Netherlands, Her Majesty Queen Maxima of the Netherlands, in her capacity as the UN Secretary General's Special Advocate for Inclusive Finance, the G20, and the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. For more than 14 years, as many of you know, IFC has been working to advance responsible finance, building and adapting consumer protection and risk mitigation practices through our global network of over 800 financial institutions, partners, and our clients. I'm so honored to participate in this event and so excited to discuss what the future holds for the Responsible Finance Forum. IFC looks forward to continuing our support to the success of the Responsible Finance Forum. Let me highlight a few reasons why. First off, as many of you know, IFC is committed to a more inclusive economy. The past few years have demonstrated both the vulnerability and the interconnectedness of the global economy. We must work together to break down the barriers of exclusion and ensure that all people, especially women, have access to economic opportunities and financial services to improve their lives. As a leading private sector investor, we are seeing firsthand increased demand to provide direct support to micro, small, and medium enterprises to strengthen their capacity to sustain operations and to support job creation, especially in times of unexpected shock. For IFC, this means supporting our clients in a way that helps the most vulnerable, including the poorest and in the most fragile markets, so that they can return to income earning opportunities as quickly as possible. Second, many of our speakers, as you saw in the video, have spoken about the unprecedented events in the emerging and developed markets that have magnified the complexity of risk, as well as innovative opportunities for inclusive finance. Today, we will no doubt hear about new risks developing with rapid advancement in digital technology, as well as the persistent risks that exist in some emerging markets. As we work to bring new people into the financial system, we must also keep in mind that there are varying levels of digital expertise and literacy. Companies are collecting data in innovative ways, though sometimes without clients knowing about it, and more digital tools rely on machine learning with algorithms that have the potential to discriminate and inbuilt biases. We need to make sure there are guardrails in place for an inclusive financial ecosystem that protects low-income, underserved consumers and allows them to reap the benefits of financial services. Finally, as we saw in the opening poll, we have with us today representations from investors, private sector, consumer organizations, researchers, and many more. Each of these stakeholders plays a critical role in inclusive finance, and the power of the Responsible Finance Forum is in bringing these groups together to define the priority challenges, to understand the evidence gaps, and work to develop recommendations and tools to advance a collective thinking. The Responsible Finance will broker conversations among such a wide range of stakeholder groups, and thus requires a neutral player. And IFC is so thrilled that the Center for Financial Inclusion is stepping into this important role as the convener for the Responsible Finance Forum. As an independent think tank, the Center for Financial Inclusion is uniquely positioned to facilitate collaboration across a diverse set of stakeholders, conduct critical analysis, and drive conversations around key risks. As we look to the future, we unfortunately know there will be ongoing challenges due to external pressures, such as inflation, conflicts, and climate change, which is why the Responsible Finance Forum is needed more than ever. I'm here to assure you that IFC remains committed to this work, and we look forward to collaborating with the Responsible Finance partners through our participation in the Governing Council of the Forum and as a contributor to future research. I look forward to learning from all of you today and contributing to this conversation. With that, I'll pass to Mayada.
Thank you so much, Sharmila. We are very excited to have you join the RFF family, and we very much appreciate IFC's continued support. I would be remiss if I didn't start out by thanking the IFC's leadership in convening the RFF since its creation in 2009. For over a decade, IFC brought together the leading actors in inclusive finance to share knowledge, practice, and to advance collective action towards improved consumer protection and responsible practices for low-income people. We're deeply honored to be entrusted with taking on this important convening role. I'd also like to thank the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth, who are our sponsors. They've been a generous supporter of CFI. And when we shared with them the news that CFI was taking on this convening role, they immediately were excited to be part of the effort, and we're grateful, and we are very grateful for their support. So in the midst of the pandemic, about a year ago, IFC approached CFI to help do some research to assess and understand the emerging risks in light of the pandemic and the growing vulnerabilities the pandemic has created for low-income people. They asked us to do a wide consultation to talk to the people who had been involved in the RFF in the past. We talked to many of you that are on this webinar, and we were your colleagues. We did that through surveys and one-on-one conversations. We heard a lot, and we're incorporating all that as we think about the future of the RFF. One of the first things we heard was that the RFF platform was deeply appreciated, and there was this eagerness to get back to business given the urgencies of our times. We heard a deep desire to be bolder and to think bigger than as we reimagine the RFF platform. We heard a great deal of feedback on the kinds of priorities we need to put at the forefront, the ways in which RFF could be structured so that it could be more effective, the types of stakeholders who needed to be at the table today. People were demanding a much more agile and forward-thinking coalition. They wanted stakeholders representing both local and regional expertise to be at the table, and they wanted mechanisms for accountability, for knowledge sharing, and for greater participation. We've taken all of this input seriously and in building and rethinking our vision for RFF. I'm happy to share with you some of the key takeaways and how we are planning to respond. Because CFI is the convener, we are always open to more feedback, and I hope today, throughout the course of the day, you continue to give us your feedback through the chat. With regard to thematic priorities, there is a very strong view across the board that the risks that poor people are facing are more complex than ever, and that consumer protection is just one of the lenses by which we need to understand and observe risks. We heard that the RFF needed to take on many of the emerging risks that affect low-income people's lives as we think about framing solutions for collective action. We heard from you the themes that were top of mind, including, of course, climate risks, which are central to poor people's lives. And there was this perception that the financial system as a whole needed to start to think about how it could improve resilience and livelihood adaptation for those people most affected by climate change. Second, we heard that the pandemic was creating enormous inequities, which could set back certain groups even further. Obviously, we've seen that in the pandemic with the disproportionate effect of care responsibilities that fell on women. And we've also heard the disproportionate effect on racial minorities. Now, we know Findex has revealed that the gender gap has declined, but we've also seen a very large number of women leave the workforce, in some cases leaving the workforce for good. And these long-term effects are things that we need to be considering. We heard that rapid digitization was both critical for the survival under COVID, but it also created a lot of vulnerabilities for low-income people, things around data privacy, algorithmic bias, among many others. The fourth issue that was top of mind for people was just how to recover from the pandemic. There are long-term impacts that are affecting households and small businesses. They're more vulnerable than ever before. And then finally, we heard that inclusive finance needed to take on the demographic changes that are happening around the world, and that these changes are not the same in different regions. While in some places we have aging populations, and others we have a large number of youth entering the workforce for the first time. So these issues are urgent. They're urgent from a consumer interest standpoint, but they're also urgent from a financial system standpoint. With the pace of change, whether that is technological change, environmental degradation, political instability, or what have you, all of us need to have information to help us make rapid decisions. So our vision for RFF prioritizes this need for rapid evidence and knowledge. To make that happen, we envision a platform with 3 core pillars. The first pillar is around knowledge sharing and curating the evidence. We want to be an aggregator of the research that is produced by many others, and to bring that to people in a easily accessible way. We want to establish partnerships because this work requires many stakeholders to drive a shared agenda. And then, of course, we have the core, which is the convening platform, these events like today. We want to do more than just have the annual event. However, we also want to bring in working groups so that we can tackle challenges throughout the year. In 2022, we're taking a slightly different approach. Mostly, our interim advisory group advised us to break up the annual meeting into smaller parts to help us as we get our bearings on as being a new convener, but also to allow more time for the pandemic to subside. We are hoping in 2023 to host an in-person event, and you'll hear much more about that later. Moving forward, we envision that RFF will be a coalition of multiple stakeholders to facilitate a state of active preparedness. CFI cannot do this alone. We see ourselves as a neutral broker to help curate the knowledge produced by many others, by researchers, by other think tanks, by academics, by practitioners. And we want to use RFF as a platform to bring this knowledge to all the stakeholders that are part of this coalition. RFF will continue to rely on the power of collective action and to make progress. This means we rely on all of you for contributing your practical experience, expertise, and time. We're truly honored to be taking on the convening role and have been inspired by the generosity, excitement, and collaboration and collaborative spirit that many of you have demonstrated as partners in RFF. So thank you again, IFC, for enabling this transition. And we're very excited at CFI to be the convener.